Kollar. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in the book of Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the Bible, and the fifth book of the Torah, the law, the collection of statutes, ordinances, and commandments that God expected his people to keep. So the Israelites are poised at the edge of the promised land. They've been around the desert for 40 years. The older generation has all passed away. The new generation is preparing to go into the promised land. And the entire book of Deuteronomy is really about how can we pass on our history, where we've come from, to our future generations, and how can we also communicate the importance of this is how we are to live. And the Israelite law was, in fact, a very special thing, that they had a law, a statute, an ordinance, an agreement. This is how we are going to live. And other law codes throughout history have also been rightly famous. The Code of Hammurabi, the Magna Carta, the Mayflower Compact. They're just examples of people saying, this is how we're going to live. These are the rules that we're going to live by. And of course, the Big Ten, the 10 words, the 10 commandments, we read a couple of days ago. And then there's also all these other kind of regulations and breaking it down of how do we worship God. And a lot of it is don't forget God when you get prosperous and comfortable. Don't say, well, I did this. Remember that God has blessed you and gotten you to where you are. And then also do not worship other gods. An entire chapter or two that we've just read a couple of days ago about how it's really important not to worship other gods. So we can get one of the most important commandments, and it says to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. How does one love God, and how does one take care of God's people? So a lot of things are about how to take care of the priests and make sure that you bring your tithes and your offerings and take care of the priests. So we're up to chapter 13, and which really it began a little bit back in chapter 12, talking about no idolatry and no following the pagan practices of the peoples that you're about to dispossess. Verse 13, if prophets or those who divine by dreams appear among you and promise you omens or portents, and the omens or the portents declared by them take place, and they say, let us follow other gods whom you have not known, let us serve them, you must not heed the words of those prophets or those who divine by dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you indeed love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. So even if a prophet comes and tells the future, and the future comes exactly like the prophet said, if the prophet says follow other gods, don't follow that prophet, don't listen to that prophet, do not follow other gods. Verse 4, the Lord your God you shall follow, him alone shall you fear. His commandments you shall keep, his voice you shall obey, him shall you serve, and him shall you hold fast. But those prophets or those who divine by dreams shall be put to death for having spoken treason against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery, to turn you from the way in which the Lord your God commanded you to walk. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. So even if they have dreams and tell the future, if they tell you not to follow God, get rid of them. Verse 6, if anyone secretly entices you, even if it is your brother, your father's son, or your mother's son, or your own son or daughter, or the wife you embrace, or your most intimate friend, saying, let's go worship other gods, whom neither you nor your ancestors have known, any of the gods of the peoples that are around you, whether near you or far away from you, from one end of the earth to the other, you must not yield to or heed any such persons. Show them no pity or compassion, and do not shield them. But you shall surely kill them. Your own hand shall be the first against them to execute them, and afterwards the hands of all the people. Stone them to death for trying to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Then all Israel shall hear and be afraid, and never again do any such wickedness. So no matter who it is pulling you away from God, don't do it. Get rid of them. Verse 12, if you hear it said about one of the towns that the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that scoundrels from among you have gone out and led the inhabitants of the town astray, saying, let us go and worship other gods whom you have not known, then you shall inquire and make a thorough investigation. If the charge is established that such an abhorrent thing has been done among you, you shall put the inhabitants of that town to the sword, utterly destroying it and everything in it, even putting its livestock to the sword. All of its spoil you shall gather into its public square, then burn the town and all its spoil with fire as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. It shall remain a perpetual ruin, never to be rebuilt. Do not let anything devoted to destruction stick to your hand, so that the Lord may turn from his fierce anger and show you compassion, and in his compassion multiply you as he swore to your ancestors. If you obey the voice of the Lord your God by keeping all his commandments that I am commanding you today, doing what is right in the sight of your God. So even if it's an entire town that is turned away from God, get rid of them. And it's interesting because as the Israelites go forward, they are going to have huge stretches where entire groups of the entire country has turned away from God, and so God will be dealing with them for that. Chapter 14. You are children of the Lord your God. You must not lacerate yourselves or shave your forelocks for the dead. So to lacerate is to cut themselves. They are not to cut themselves or to shave their forelocks for the dead. I'm guessing that was a cultural thing that people would do to honor dead people. And it's like, no. We don't cut ourselves, and we don't shave the front of our head. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. It is you the Lord has chosen out of all the peoples on earth to be his people, his treasured possession. Verse 3, you shall not eat any abhorrent thing. These are the animals you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. Any animal that divides the hoof and has the hoof cleft in two, and chews the cud, among the animals you may eat. So if you ever look at a cow's hoof, it's got a split in it, and so do goats and sheep have kind of a split in their hoof. And then after they eat grass, then cows have 4 stomachs, and so it goes down to the first stomach, and then cough it up and chew it some more and stick it down, and it goes through a process of digestion where they have to sit and chew the food, the grass that they've eaten, so chew the cud. Yet of those that chew the cud and have hoof cleft, you shall not eat these. So even though they chew the cud, and even though their hoof is split, you do not eat the camel, the hare, the rock badger, because they chew the cud, but they do not divide the hoof. They are unclean for you. So even though their hoof is not divided, even though they chew the cud, their hoof isn't split, so you don't eat them. And the pig, because it divides the hoof, but it does not chew the cud, it is unclean for you. You shall not eat their meat, you shall not touch their carcasses. So a pig doesn't have a split hoof, it does, but it doesn't chew the cud. Pigs will eat literally anything that they can get a hold of. If you're going to be particular about every single verse in the Bible, that would mean no bacon. Or we're going to say New Testament, God has declared all foods to be clean, which is a recognition that things do change even with God over time. Verse 9, of all that live in water you may eat these. Whatever has fins and scales you may eat, and whatever does not have fins and scales you shall not eat. It is unclean for you. So fish, yes. Lobster, no. Crabs, scallops, no. All those wonderful, I love seafood. But later on, when we get to the New Testament, God declares all things clean. So, verse 11, you may eat any clean birds, but these are the ones you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the osprey, the buzzard, the kite of any kind, every raven of every kind, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, the hawk of any kind, the little owl and the great owl, the water hen, the desert owl, the carrion vulture and the cormorant, the stork, the heron of any kind, the hoopoe and the bat. And all winged insects are unclean for you; they shall not be eaten. You may eat any clean winged creature. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the aliens residing in your towns for them to eat, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a people holy to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Why does it say that? We don't know exactly why. Was it a cultural thing? Was there a group that somehow did it? There's some other reason? But because of that verse, which is repeated, we heard it also back in Exodus, not to boil a kid in its mother's milk. Really conservative Jewish people will have two sets of dishes, one for dairy and one for meat. And they will have dairy at breakfast and they will have meat at dinner because of this verse, do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. So they don't mix milk and meat and have them completely separate. I'm pretty sure that we can still eat cheeseburgers, but I'm not Jewish. Verse 22, set apart a tithe of all the yield of your seed that is brought in yearly from the field, in the presence of the Lord your God, in the place that he will choose a dwelling for his name. You shall eat the tithe of your grain, your wine, and your oil, as well as the firstlings of your herd and flock, so that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. So you need to set aside the first tenth and give it to God. But actually go to the temple and eat it as a big party. But if when the Lord your God has blessed you, the distance is so great that you are unable to transport it, because the place where the Lord your God will choose to set his name is too far away from you, then you may turn it into money. With the money secure in hand, go to the place that the Lord your God will choose. Spend the money for whatever you wish, oxen, sheep, wine, strong drink, or whatever you desire. And you shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God, and your household rejoicing together. As for the Levites residents in your town, do not neglect them, because they have no allotment or inheritance with you. So you need to give the first of what is produced to God. Well, you need to go and eat it together as a party to God, but you also have to remember the priests. Don't forget the priests. Verse 28, every third year you shall bring out the full tithe of your produce for that year and store it within your towns. The Levites, because they have no allotment or inheritance with you, as well as the resident aliens, the orphans, the widows in your town, may come and eat their fill, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work that you undertake. So every third year, you need to set aside a tithe, and you need to have it there in a storehouse in your town, so that any widow, any orphan, any stranger, any resident alien can come and can eat and not starve to death. Again, we get flack from people who are like, one verse and it says, oh, we have to do this because of this one verse. But do we take every third year and set aside stuff so that people that are on the edges of society, widows and orphans, poor people, would have something that they can eat and not die? Do we do that? Do we set aside anything for the care of others? And according to this, every third year, the tithe, instead of being eaten as a big party, should be set aside for people in need, that they can be able to eat what they need and not starve to death. Just interesting thought. And what is all of the supply? It's still, we need to worship God above and beyond anything else. We need to not let other things pull us away from our worship of God. We need to be very diligent and on guard against things pulling us away from God. And we need to give to God what is God's. They record as a tithe. Tithe is 10%. Or in this, also as they were describing, the first of the first fruits, the first animals born, the first crops produced, is given to God. But in part of giving it to God was to go to the temple and to have a party and to eat together. and of course give it to the priest as well. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thanks so much for being here. Like, subscribe, comment, and see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.